that I want to accomplish. My job is to be there as a public servant and to work with other public servants, listening as the interface between the community and the school board. And really, that's a large chunk of our job, is listening, working on transparency, communication, accountability, and trying to be, most importantly, supportive to the ridiculously highly intelligent, dedicated professionals that are very serious about their jobs, and trying to make the next continued generations have more and greater opportunities. So that's that answer. Priorities, again, a lot of it, so I've spent the last several weeks and months mostly listening and interviewing, and I've been interviewing students, former students, staff, teachers, school board members from around the state. And again, the things that kept getting hammered into me and I kept hearing again and again and again were, besides, all the things that I've mentioned, they were, there's a lot of voices that want to be heard. There's a lot of teachers and students that don't feel that there's a connect with the board. In fact, they feel very unheard. And that is kind of a priority. The teachers and the educators, they're the boots on the ground. They're first eyes, seeing what's happening, and they know the wants and needs. And it is essential to have them not only feeling part of the process, but engaged and part of the process. Really, we need to listen to all voices, parents and administration. And as a board member, regardless of my expertise, my job is to shut up, listen, and I'm not the expert in the room, and I'm not going to pretend I am. I'm going to listen to the experts that are, and the opinions and needs, and
Hey,
we
Bill.
like that. Concerns and things that are doing well. In terms of doing well, West Lynn is doing, and Wilsonville have done ridiculously high, wonderful things, high test scores, graduation rates, high acceptance to colleges, other forms of learning. Kids are fairly safe. The West Lynn schools are one of the main reasons people move to West Lynn. Wilsonville and West Lynn also do an incredible job at supporting. However, important improvements that we keep hearing. And where am I on time? I'll wait until you throw me up a number. So these are the things that kept coming back to me from students and from teachers, that the students are being trained to perform well, to test, but not to learn. They feel themselves that they are in a gorge and purge kind of method. They can repeat the information, but they're concerned about the deep understanding and future application of these situations is lasting. There's also a concern that is being threaded of a fostered culture of too good to fail. Students should fail when they don't do the work and they don't show up and they're not present in class. And teachers have reported that they have felt their jobs threatened when they did not do so. That's of great concern. And that's also another example of failing upward, which is something I really have very little interest in supporting. Staff feels that past members of boards in the past have had personal agendas and really weren't listening. Most importantly, the audio recording of the boards is horrible, and I would really like that to get better. We still have issues in our schools that are systemic and needing addressing, and we won't go into those necessarily right now, but mostly one of the things that I've been hearing for months before I even got involved in this process was the number of teachers that I was speaking to and engaging with that were coming home in tears and fearing for their own safety. Hearing that several other staff and teachers have opted out of vaccinations. And when people, especially teachers and educators or people in authority, are under stress and feeling anxious of their safety, they will implicitly convey that to those they are teaching. It is unintentional. It is involuntary, and most importantly, it is very avoidable. It's been brought to my attention that the custodial staff and often is overburdened, and they fear that it's impossible not to cross-contaminate. And I'm guessing I'm coming close to time. I want to. Oh, perfect. All right. So here's one of my favorites. So the students I interviewed, this was their responses. These were their concerns. And by the way, our students are incredibly well-versed. I love talking to them. Their requests were for adequate self and healthy relationship education. They asked for critical feeling that they felt application became an extension of regurgitation of previous schools of thoughts, and they didn't feel like they were actually doing new sorts of thoughts. They were just regurgitating. The effect that greater digital literary education, how susceptible that they felt to misinformation and cognitive biases, how to reliably find research resources, and they were concerned with the hyperfixation of grades over skill sets. So we have students that are very good at passing tests, but once they were getting to the higher education levels, they didn't feel that they could retain it, use it, apply it. That's of concern. And that there is a disconnect between the learning systems and outcomes. The learning rubrics are not in place to measure their outcomes. We're really good at measuring their test scores, but SATs have consistently been shown not to be a good predictor of overall success. And there is a high social pressure on grades, with positive and negative. And I will cede my time and answer any questions later. And thank you, everyone. And thank you, everyone who's running for a school board, because if you are, it means you care. And that's the greatest thing I can hear of a community I live in. And thank you. Oh, wait, one last
David.
thing. Wait,
Oh,
one last thing.
okay.
I am running as a quasi independent candidate. I'm not affiliated with any organizations. I'm not seeking contributions. I don't have any managers, and I'm not seeking endorsements. All I want is your vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, David, and your enthusiasm. We really appreciate it. Who would like to speak next? Would you like me to choose? Oh, Kirsten, thank you.
Of course. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having us here tonight. My name is Kirsten Wyatt, and my pronouns are she and her, and I'm running for position number 3 on the Westland-Wilsonville School Board. My husband Kent and I have 2 daughters. Our daughter Josephine is in the 3rd grade, and our daughter Eleanor is in the 5th grade. And both are in the dual language program at Trillium Creek Primary School in West Lynn. And so during this past year, during this pandemic, a saying in our house has been, we, not me, and that we can either choose to think about what's best for ourselves or just our family, or we can work to be part of a larger community response and solution doing our part to help others. And so it's really with that mindset that I decided to run for the school board. We know that our schools are consistently top ranked in the state, and I'm running to sustain and build on that tradition of excellence. And I really think that it's with this we, not me approach that we can approach these really tricky challenges ahead in public education in a way that's inclusive and meaningful and lasting. And so my campaign priorities are focused on fiscal sustainability, community engagement, and innovative leadership, because I love our schools, I love our communities, and I want to maintain our schools' strong reputations. Currently, I'm serving as the chair of the school district budget committee, and I've enjoyed this role very much. Last year, for the first time, the school district received the highest award from the Government Finance Officers Association for budgeting. And we also successfully engaged a graduate student and 3 high school students in preparing the first ever award for a popular annual financial report, which is like a financial report for people who don't have a background in governmental finance. And then heading into the future, strong fiscal oversight is important as we deal with and build a budget that deals with pandemic realities while maintaining an adequate fund balance. And then also providing continued oversight of the $200 million bond proceeds that voters approved in 2019. I'm also really passionate about community engagement, and I welcome the chance to find ways to get more students involved in school board decision making, and then of course including all families in district initiatives. And I really feel like if this shift to all virtual meetings all the time has taught us anything, it's that online engagement is possible, and what it can do at times is level the playing field so every family can have an equal voice and not just those who can attend an in-person meeting. And I really observed in this last year that sometimes when engagement and communications is not prioritized, a fear of an unknown future can lead to frustration and anger. And so as we start thinking about reopening schools to full time, we really need to be communicative and transparent in how we share that information with families And so they know just how reopening decisions are made, but who makes those decisions, and we can quell that rising frustration with all of us who are deeply concerned about our kids. And I really believe that we can open our schools to full time in a way that makes our schools even stronger by having a renewed interest and understanding of how technology plays into an average school day. And we can also do this in a way that makes every student, every family, every teacher feel safe when they return to school. Professionally, I am the co-founder and executive director of a nonprofit association called ELGL, the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network. We have 5,000 members internationally who work for and with towns, cities, and counties. And I also co-host the GovLove podcast about the people, policies, and professions in local government. A major initiative that we work on with local governments is supporting them in becoming anti-racist. And so similarly, a key goal in my campaign, and if elected, will be to support anti-racist policies, educators, and staff, so we can all become lifelong learners about the complex and deliberate design of racism in our country. And I want to make sure that the role of race, gender, stereotypes, and power constructs should be included in our curriculum, starting in kindergarten and through graduation. I'm also passionate about the idea of innovation and what 21st century leaders look like in this day and age. And so building out more programming in career and technical education, science, technology, engineering, and art, and civics, as well as practical internships, will provide real world skills for our students. And I'm really excited to think about the paths that my daughters might have as Westland High School graduates. And I think specific to this group tonight, it's really exciting to think about how career and technical education opportunities might flourish in our own backyard in the Stafford Hamlet, with the ability to learn more about agriculture, farm forestry, ecology, sustainability, and environmental protection. Literally, we have a classroom in our backyards, and I think that's really exciting. My husband and I have lived in Westland for 14 years. My back fence abuts the Stafford Hamlet, so I'm not quite your neighbor, but I'm as close as I can get while still living in Westland. I'm also the chair of the Westland Library Foundation, and I serve on the board of directors for a group called Politicit that provides childcare cost reimbursement so parents can get involved in public affairs. And I serve on the editorial board for an academic journal called the State and Local Government Review. My career path has been in public service. I recognize some of your names from when I served as the assistant city manager for the city of Westland. I've also worked as an education finance analyst for the Virginia Department of Education. And my undergraduate degree is in politics from Willamette University, and I have a master's in public administration from the University of North Carolina. And yes, I did name both of my dogs after North Carolina basketball players. So I just want to thank all of you again for having us tonight, for giving us a chance to introduce ourselves, to talk about the things that we care about and answer your questions. For me, this campaign is about listening, about introducing myself to others so I'm approachable if elected, so you know you can always come to me with your questions and comments, but then also listening to you and the concerns that you have that matter the most to you and your families and your students, because we know that when we have strong communities and strong schools, we create amazing places to live. So thank you again for having me, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. We really appreciate your time tonight. Who would like to speak next? Jump right in. Kelly, you ready? Fantastic.
So, hi, yes, I'm Kelly Slew, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight about the candidacy for the Westland Wilsonville School Board. I thought I would begin with just a little bit of background about me to help you understand and shed some light on why I'm running for the Westland Wilsonville School Board. It will show my devotion to serving, and I've pretty much spent my lifetime serving in various ways. I actually grew up in West Lynn and went to Cedar Oak Park, Bolton, and Westland High School. And growing up in Westland back in the day is very different than what it is now. It was a lot of farmland. And in fact, I picked strawberries, beans, lots of berries in the summer. starting at the age of 12. And then when I was 15, I worked at a candy store over in the Oregon City Shopping Center across the bridge. I took a bus because I needed to start saving for college. I grew up in a very modest household, and I have two younger brothers, and we are stair-stepped. So all three of us were going to be in college at the same time, and my parents could not afford to pay for three of us in college. So we had to save and get scholarships and student loans. I attended Oregon State because I wanted to be a pediatrician. I have a heart for kids, I always have. And as I was nearing my senior year, I realized I was not going to be able to afford the interview application process or even med school. And I found out that Oregon State had the only College of Pharmacy program in the state, and I applied and I was accepted. And one of my first jobs was actually in Northeast Portland. And I realized then that, there was a population there that was also struggling. And when I would deliver prescriptions, because one of my responsibilities was counseling them as a pharmacist, they could not pay sometimes for their co-pays or their over-the-counter items. And so I would help pay the balance of what they owed. And then I decided to collect hotel-sized toiletries or little Happy Meal toys, and I carried those with me when I made the deliveries. My husband and I moved back to Westland 25 years ago to raise our family in Westland because as I said, I love the community, and we are very dedicated to living in this wonderful community. And we actually live in the Stafford Hamlet, not far from the Oswego Winery, which used to be an equestrian center when I was growing up. Just a couple weeks ago, I finally finished cleaning up all of the storm debris. And right after the storm, we in our neighborhood helped each other. There was just tremendous community support. We were taking a chipper and everybody was just picking up each other's yards and clearing up the debris. As a long-term Westland resident, I am dedicated to this community. I care about Westland and its members. I did run for the state legislature. I am not a politician. I figured that out very quickly. My heart is just in serving people. And that is why I want to serve on the school board. I have a heart for kids and families. My medical background as a pharmacist can help navigate the metrics in decision-making required to keep our students and our teachers safe and healthy. As a mother of a child who has sensory issues, I understand the importance of advocacy because a one-size-fits-all education approach does not work. As a parent, I have been active in their education as a parent volunteer in their classroom, sports, 4-H, and the Westland High School equestrian team. One of my strengths is that I am a good listener. I am a proponent of healthy conversations. I value other people's perspectives and opinions because I feel that is essential in making informed decisions. As far as my priorities, I am an advocate of safely reopening schools 5 days a week for families who wish full-time in-class instruction. It is safer because it would be a controlled environment for a full day. Also getting the students caught up as we face challenges from COVID and the impact it has had emotionally, developmentally, academically. And then also addressing each student's individual needs by providing a wide range of opportunities like IEP, STEM, career technical training, and then also making sure that they have the application skills as they are learning. One of my main priorities is establishing a stronger partnership and open communication with the community, parents, the students, the teachers. I feel that is probably where the district is lacking. And then also providing a safe, inclusive, tolerant learning environment for all students, regardless of race, gender, culture, or belief. I want the teachers to have a safe environment in the classroom from any disruptive or negative behaviors. And I am a proponent of keeping the student resource officers in the Westland-Wilsonville School District. The families overwhelmingly supported the survey of keeping them in the schools. The SROs provide a multi-level safety and relationship, especially with overdoses. They are trained to administer Narcan. And with Measure 110 passing, that is something that we will be needing to address. What is working in the district? You know, families move to Westland-Wilsonville because of the schools. Westland-Wilsonville is inclusive with children with disabilities. They are integrated into the classroom for instruction learning right along with their peers, and they have an aide as well to help them. As I said, you know, parents move to Westland-Wilsonville. We have one of the top graduation rates in the state because of their education. What can be improved, as I said earlier, is communication and transparency. I believe we need to get the communication out beforehand on the board meetings, so it's not a surprise. And then afterwards, we really need to follow up. At the last board meeting, I agree with David, it is hard to hear them. And when they were talking about opening, we really need to set out the reasons of why school is not opening. And there's also a lack of trust. And I want to earn the trust by opening up the transparency and communication, because all voices need to be heard, and we need to create a partnership with the community so everyone understands their roles and that we can come together. Also, we need to improve the diversity in the district by hiring and retaining faculty and staff with inclusive values. And I would love to encourage them to have a active role in the DEI training and have them offer their perspectives and insight. So I think.
Yes, thank you so much, Kelly. If you'd like to do a quick, if you want to do a quick summary, but the 8 minutes has concluded.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Kelly, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Hi, welcome.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, I'll go next. Yeah. So thank you so much, Katie, for organizing this. Thank you, Bill, for inviting me. Thank you to everyone for attending. It's good to be here. So my name is Seiji Shiratori. A lot of folks call me Sage. I don't mind either one. It's like the difference between Johnny and John. It's all the same to me. So don't be too worried about it. Thanks for the history lesson about the Witten family. And I didn't realize how long ago the hops industry actually started here. That was kind of cool. It kind of reminded me of my hometown. I grew up in a little place in Blackfoot, Idaho, and we could tell you history lessons there as well. Both my parents were born there. My dad, he actually worked in the potato processing plant his whole life. He started out sweeping floors there and then rose to the level of doing research and development back in the day when you could do that without a college degree. And now that I think about my hometown, my mom's younger brother, he was actually a real professional rodeo cowboy. So that's the kind of place it was. But anyway, I came here to go to Willamette University, like Kirsten and like some folks here, and I married my roommate's sister, Elisa. She's hiding here off screen, and she's helped me write this story. Elisa and I worked in and around the Oregon State Capitol for a few years there. That's kind of where our public service started. And then to make a long story short, I was really grateful to be fortunate enough to be invited to join the U.S. Foreign Service and to be your diplomat abroad, representing our country, serving in embassies and consulates and advising military commands in several countries. Lisa and I, we lived in Pakistan, Portugal, Senegal, East Timor, Bulgaria, what am I missing, dear? Bahrain. I spent a wonderful year in Iraq. And I did some Kosovo work, and we also lived in Virginia and Florida. Along the way, we raised a couple of kids in a variety of different school systems, learned some good and bad from a variety of different school systems. And then as I was able to retire from that career, we were able to come back here to Wilsonville, which is where where our little journey began as a family, and just real happy to be back here. I'm grateful that I got on with the state of Oregon as a because I'm too young to really retire. So I'm the policy director for the property tax division at Oregon Department of Revenue. That's my day job, and I'm going to keep it. So anyway, why am I running? I'm running, I get basically for three reasons. So the first reason is that, as others have mentioned, our schools here in Westland Wilsonville, they're pretty good. I'm not at all disappointed. Our older son is about to graduate high school, and I'll brag here and say I think he's going to go off to Cal Poly or Reed. Our younger son, he's about to enter Wilsonville High School, and you know, we've all as a family been real happy with the teaching, the counselors, the facilities. It's been good. And so on the school board, one of my goals will be, let's just not mess it up. Now, we've got room for improvement. I'll talk about that in a few moments. You know, we could improve in terms of graduation rates and transparency and accountability for fiscal responsibility. But all in all, it's a pretty good place. And as Kelly said, yeah, folks come here because it's a good school district. That brings me to my second reason for running, which is I think we can really make a better connection between the school board, the school district, and folks who do not have kids, or folks whose kids are adults, because I know a little bit about political economy, and economies are an ecosystem, including this economy of ours in the Westland, Wilsonville hometowns. It's all an ecosystem. We obviously it works one way in which, we got more people here paying property taxes. That gives us a better tax base to have better schools. But it also works the other direction. Also works both ways. You're not going to get employment coming here, investment, continued investment in infrastructure, social services, public safety. That all comes with, in part, with the good schools. And I can tell you from experience, because Lisa and I, we had a house in Northern Virginia, not just a little too far south of the metro area. And during the Great Recession, the housing values never recovered. The whole community suffered in terms of public safety, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of sanitation, in terms of services. And here's the reason. Nobody wanted to live there. Nobody wanted to live there because the schools there were not that good. Thankfully, we've got here in Westland Wilsonville a virtuous cycle. Schools are pretty good. Economy is pretty good. Let's not mess it up. Now, the third reason I'm running it is personal to me. And that's just that, I know there's a couple of views out there about what it means to be an American. I'm perhaps not mainstream. I don't know, but there is a view out there that you're only a quote unquote real American if your forefathers came on the right boat, speaking the right language at the right time with the right religion. Well, that's not my view. So that's the other thing that kind of motivates me is that we've got a dialogue about that type of issue not just in our world, in our country, but also in our communities right here. So I want to be part of that dialogue. Now, if there's a little bit of time, I'll talk about some issues too, because I think that's what you guys really care about, I think. So in no particular order, let me address the Dollar Street Middle School and the replacement for the upgrade, the replacement for the vocational arts school there at 8th Creek. And it's, this is a tough one, right? And there's a couple of aspects to it. And by the way, the train's already left the station in many ways, but I think we can make it so that the ride on the train is not quite so rocky, I hope, right? So one aspect of this is is that vocational technical school, are we doing it right or are we doing it wrong? Doing it wrong, I think, would be if we're just kind of diverting people away from our other two high schools who are otherwise not college bound and just kind of artificially inflating the numbers of our other two high schools and not really serving these folks that are not college bound. Doing it right, on the other hand, and I think we are, but I do want to be sure and do some be vigilant as a school board member on this issue. Doing it right would be to make sure that that really makes a connection between those kids that aren't college bound and jobs. That's what it's all about, right? That's one thing where the British system actually does a little bit better job than ours, is it does connect such folks to jobs a little bit faster than our system does. Now, it has a downside because kids that young sometimes have a hard time making these life-changing choices. But in terms of connection to jobs, I'll just expand on this point a little bit. There are jobs right here in Oregon that do not require a college degree in the civilian maritime industry, in welding, and in the trades, and certainly in the healthcare sector. There are jobs like that that are going unfilled because we're not training enough Oregonians to go into those jobs. And I think we can do a little bit better at that. Let me make sure I don't miss your questions. You asked what would I like about where we are and what might need to be improved. What I like, I think I've already touched on. I think we've got a pretty good school system. What I think could be improved is communication. Communication is two ways. It's a dialogue. It's more than just having a website and sending out a bunch of emails. This is the listening that a lot of us here have been talking about. Come to the school board meetings, sure, but when I'm there, is going to be more than an experience where, oh, thank you for sharing your piece. Okay, let's move on, next agenda item. It's going to be an actual dialogue, because that's what communication is. It's hearing you and engaging with you and responding to you and telling you we're either going to do what you've asked or we're not able to because of X, Y, and Z, not just because we arbitrarily decided it's not something that we really fancy to do right now. So communication, I think we could improve. Let me go further down into issues. Let's hit the hard ones. Let's talk about bonds, right? It's going to be easy for us on the school board coming up because we've already dealt with the tough bond issue in 2019. I don't think we should need to deal with one for quite some time in the future. I might be wrong about that. You tell me if I'm wrong about that, and I'll listen to you. But I think it was kind of rocky, wasn't it, with that 2019 bond issue? We had a little bit of miscalculation as a school district based on not having factored in the benefits of the refinance of the 2015 bonds. So folks got a little bit higher property tax bill than I think they were expecting. And I know that the school board solution of, okay, well, we'll charge you a little bit less on your next property tax bill is less than ideal, but it's what's possible. They're working with what's possible. What I'll say about that is going forward, I'm going to pledge to you that I'm going to watch that type of issue very, very carefully as a school board member, and be transparent with you about it, and invite you to share your views about it. And so just to recognize that I know that's very important to folks here. I never did finish my point on the middle school replacement over there at Dollar Street. The other thing I wanted to say about it is it's going to be disruptive. It might be. I know folks might be worried about noise and traffic and changes in their environment and this sort of thing to both of those locations. Not going to kid ourselves that there won't be changes. But again, this comes back to the communication. Let's see if we can factor in your views, your concerns. Let's empathize with what's going on. If you live in that Willamette neighborhood or you live near that Athey Creek Middle School, let's make sure we factor in your concerns, whether you have children or not, in that type of discussion. So if I've got time, let me go on to talking about this coming back from COVID and getting back to school 5 days a week. And if you go to my website, shuratorifororegon.com, you'll see that I've done some videos and some writing on this issue. I'd like to do more, time permitting. The one I've got there about this COVID issue is a little outdated because after I did that one, then our school board did develop its plan for how we're bringing kids back in September 5 days a week for those folks that want to do that. And I think that's good news for a lot of folks. But again, as the CDC's guidelines say, it's not just that, okay, now we can go to 3-foot distancing for elementary kids instead of 6 foot and 3-foot distancing for secondary school kids in counties with the right numbers. It's also that there's still these other guidelines. If we can get vaccinated, we should get vaccinated. If we wear a mask, to respect the social distancing. These good practices that we've developed as we ride out what comes next in COVID. It's kind of tempting to feel like well, I mean, we have made a lot of progress. Are we going to be vaccinated before the variants get ahead of us? We don't know. We got to be prepared. We got to learn the lessons. But yeah, I think I was about to say everybody wants the kids back at school. I know there are exceptions to that too out there, but I think all in all, we're all on the same page. I mean, the asynchronous learning, that was certainly not working for a lot of kids. The live real-time Zoom learning works for some kids, but not all kids. Certainly not working for kids with some learning challenges or families where maybe they've got young kids and both parents working and the parents can't telecommute. So Katie, do tell me if I'm running out of time, because I can keep on talking and talking.
Yes, we have exceeded the 8 minutes.
Have I done it? Okay. All
Yeah.
right. You got to yell at me. So, all right. Thank you
It's
so
all
much.
good information from all of you.
Yeah.
So
Thank
it's
you so
really
much. I
hard.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Seji. Really appreciate your time and being with us tonight. Who do we have left?
Me, Lewis Taylor.
Hey, Lewis, welcome.
Thank you. for
Okay,
having me.
ready to roll?
You know what? No better time than the present, right?
Yes,
All
thank
right,
you
all
so
right.
much.
Yeah, no, thank you. And hello, everyone. Typically, when I speak in front of people, I can feel the energy in the room, but I guess I'll just have to feel the energy in the Zoom. So I appreciate you all welcoming me and all of the other candidates. I look forward to the candidates that I'll have a chance to work beside. I am Lewis Taylor. I'm running unopposed, so I will be fortunately a future board member, and I'm proud to say that. And I am running for position number 1. I originally started down this path with my 2 little girls who were in the school district. I have a 14-year-old who's a freshman at Westland High School. A 12-year-old just had her birthday this last weekend, who's a 6th grader at Athey Creek. And I've lived in Westland actually and in the Hamlet for 17 years. So I am a Hamlet resident. I live just below Johnson Road and in between Shadowwood Park. So, so hi, everybody. We've been, like I said, we started in Westland before we had children. We moved to Westland for the school districts before we decided to have a family. My wife is from Oregon City. I was born and raised in Northeast Portland, and not what the Northeast Portland is today, but what I consider to be the real Northeast Portland. And we can unpack that another day. I'm a business owner. I own 3 different companies, and I am located in downtown Willamette in the new Icon building on 11th Street. Proud to have a business in the community, a family in the community, and to continue to give a service to the community. So I want to thank you all for giving me your time, because this is time you can never get back, and time is our most valuable possession. So I'm really choosy as about who I give it to. So thank you all. Why I'm interested in being a board member, it really came down to me having, first and foremost, 2 little brown girls who are in this district. My experience has been much different than a lot of yours, I would imagine, just simply because of my family is a biracial family. And we've had some challenges. Now, what I will say is that our experience within this district has been 99% positive. And so what we as a family have ensured that we don't let the 1% of the problems that we have disrupt our 99% positivity. So, and with those experiences, we found that there was some need for growth within this district, and some of those things we'll talk about. But what I will say is that my interest in the school board started with my experience with handling some issues that I had with my daughters in elementary school, and there not being a clear vision with how to handle issues of, in our case, racism. And this was 5-6 years ago. So the district has come a long way, and I'm proud of that, because we've seen the changes that have taken place as we start to discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is one of my initiatives. And my contribution to the board, I've spent 14 years in higher education as a board member and a state elected board with Western Oregon University. And I was the finance chair for that university. So I bring a strong financial background, a strong understanding of endowments, budgets, balance sheets, you name it. So I'm excited to bring that acumen and that experience to the board. And it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I think it'll be very, very valuable with some of the things that we're facing. So the other thing, I've served on boards as far as Friends of the Children. I was on their junior board, and I currently serve as a finance chair on the Fly Foundation, which is a foundation that scholarships um, kids who are underserved and those who have means with the right and the ability to play basketball. So my background is very, very humble, and someday maybe we'll unpack that. But I'm excited to serve, and I'm looking forward for the opportunity. My priorities in the district will center around, one, getting our kids back to school full time. I think that's very important. My two kids have struggled during this pandemic. They started off great. And then recently, within the last, I'd say 4 to 6 weeks, they've gone downhill pretty rapidly. So it's extremely important, because of my experience and because of the science and the data that is out there, that we get kids back to school full time. And I think there's a safe way to do that while respecting our educators' need for safety, but also respecting our kids' need for an education. And so I think it's important to pay attention to both sides and see how we can work together to effectively get our kids back in school full time. The second initiative that I have is to build a culture of trust, transparency, inclusivity, and do that within this robust community. And I think that there's a way to do that. A lot of the transparency issues that I've heard about, I have not personally experienced. So part of that I want to unpack. What is it that people are looking for that we're missing the mark on? Because I know how much time and effort it takes to be a board member, and I know that board members don't come into this purposefully trying to keep secrets. So what is it that the community is yearning for that they feel like is being hidden from them, right? And so I've met with each individual board member except one, and the one that I haven't met with has been extremely busy. So there is a justification for us not being able to meet. And during those meetings, I've learned a lot. I've learned that there's a disconnect between when we talk about finance or our $206 million bond and the decisions that are being made financially, and how that communication flows downhill to our budget community or committee, excuse me. And I think that if we're going to have subcommittees of a board, there's some transparency that should take place between top level and how that flows down to those committees that we're asking to support us. And sometimes what I'm told is that there are decisions that are made and those committees are just there to confirm, not really be a part of the actual flow of making that decision. And I think that we could do a better job of communicating with those subcommittees and supporting them so that they're talking from a place of education, not a place of reaction, right? So if you don't empower them to have the information on the front end, it makes them look like a donkey on the back end. And so those are just direct, feedback that I'm getting from these members. And so what I wanted to do is make sure that as I prepare myself to become a board member, that I understand who the potential stakeholders are that I may be sitting beside, but also understand where the board has been and where it's looking to go, and how that I can best serve not only my colleagues that I'll be sitting with, but also serve our community in a way that brings us together and not pushes us apart. So that's really important to me. From a budget standpoint, I have a strong background in finance, 22 years in the wealth management space. So that is something that comes easy for me. I look forward to ensuring that our programs are being met and we are sticking to our long-term priorities. There have been a lot of people that have come before us that have put a lot of hard work into developing and designing these programs for specific purposes. So just making sure that we stay true to the work that's already been done, right? And not stepping on the people that have put in a lot of time, which is future time that we're going to have to invest. And we would hope that only those who precede us would not step on the work that we had done. So I want to honor that work that's been done, but also be mindful of how we shepherd that work forward. Increasing access to career pathways and technical education opportunity. I think that that's a big deal, not for those who are the haves, but more specifically for the have-nots? How do we continue to support the underserved community who may not have the means to have access to technology, right? We know that our communities, for the most part, are very affluent and educated community, which is why we all live here, right? And if we say anything different, we're kidding ourselves. So how do we support those? And it doesn't matter if you're white, black, brown, or some other color, ethnicity, or how you identify. How do we support those people to make sure that they're getting same access to technology and services that a lot of us are already able to pay for our children? So it's important for me to make sure that we're not just neglecting or glossing over that need for that particular demographic. And when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, I don't know that there'd be any person on this board who would be able to challenge me on what that looks like. But what I will say is that I give a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion talks to Fortune 100, Fortune 500 organizations. And it's easy to say you want diversity, equity, and inclusion, but are you truly ready for it, right? We've spent our whole lives in this community, including myself, the last 17 years, operating in safe spaces. But if I throw one change to that safe space, the whole environment changes. So you might not be ready for that diversity, right? Because we have our water cooler groups and we circle up, everybody feels like they have a safe space, they speak freely. You put one new person, doesn't matter your color, in that group, the whole dynamic shifts. Now, I can't talk to, Kirsten, I can't talk to Seiji. I can't talk to certain people because, hey, you know what? I'm going to pull you over to the side and we'll have this conversation now because I don't trust the new guy or the new gal, right? So you might say you're ready for diversity, but that diversity you might not be ready to include. So how do we take diversity, equity, and inclusion and make sure that we're ready for it? Okay. And equity doesn't equal equality. And so there's a big difference between the two. So making sure that we're mindful and have an understanding of what that means, and making sure that we are putting resources behind equality, which will build equity. And there's a big difference between that. And so I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm excited to potentially work with all of the candidates that are here today. I'm excited to be able to share my expertise in areas, and I'm excited to bring a different lens to the community. Like I said, I grew up with humble beginnings, and because of that, I'm able to understand the population that we're looking to serve, what it's like to look through the lens of that child's eye, and what it's like to design a policy that you may think is in the best interest of someone of color, but you have no idea what it's like to live through a person of color. So that positive policy that you think you've put into place could have a negative impact inadvertently. You had the best intentions. So how do we make sure that we design policies that are sustainable, that are going to encourage to have a teaching body that matches the student body? And then once we get that diversity in our district, how do we retain it? Okay, it's easy to go out and recruit it, but we need to keep it and keep people that look like our student body in the districts where they don't want to move away. And that's a whole nother conversation. And so I look forward to bringing some of that knowledge to how we retain diversity into the district and how we continue to work with the community to provide the transparency that they actually want, not what we think that they want. So I thank you for your time this evening. I look forward to answering more questions. I look forward to working with all of the potential candidates, and I look forward to being a member of the Westland-Wilsonville board. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Louis, and all of the candidates running for Westland-Wilsonville School Board. We'd like to take this opportunity just to open it up to a question and answer period from the board members and the community. Katie Wilson, oh, hi. I'm hoping you can help us with the raise your hand feature as people raise their hand and questions come up.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Would anyone like to offer the candidates the first question?
So again, we just want to remind you the raise your hand feature is down usually in the lower portion of your screen. Some Apple devices have the raise your hand feature in the upper portion of your screen. Oh, we have a question. Okay. What?
It is from Leslie Hertz.
Sorry, my computer froze for a second. Okay. Leslie, would you like to ask your question?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. You addressed a lot of my questions. For the other candidates, what do you see as the district's most pressing issues regarding equity and inclusion?
Who would like to take that? Oh, Kirsten?
I could. So I was looking at some statewide data recently that showed that while 40% of students in the state of Oregon are students of color, only 10% of our teachers in the state are teachers of color. And so this concept of making sure that our teaching staff looks like the students that they serve, it's still very, the ratio does not make sense, and we don't have a representative sample of teachers who look like our students. And so I think that as we think about this idea of bringing in teachers and faculty and staff who can become the models for their students, that students can aspire to want to be like. I mean, I think every student at some point or another has a favorite teacher that drives them to succeed. We really need to pay attention to that ratio. And there is currently a bill in the legislature that would require that in the case of any sort of layoffs or reductions in force in our teaching staff, that we try to keep that ratio consistent and not have the first teachers who may be laid off or let go be the last in, the last hired, to be the first ones out during that scenario. I think that there are some nuanced and very specific policies, like making sure that we protect our teachers who have come to our districts and are working in our schools, and making sure that when we're in situations of tight budgets that we are building in racial equity. I think that those are the types of things that we can start looking at. And then I think it's important to have school board members who are comfortable being advocates for state level policies that affect our local district level diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And so, you know, to me, being able to work well with all levels of government, whether it's our local governments, you know, in our cities, in our hamlets, in our county, all the way up to our state legislature, to advocate for policies and programs that will benefit our students. I think that's a really important trait to have, to make sure that the people that we elect have strong relationships across the board with all levels of government.
Can I raise my literal hand?
Yes, Edgy. Thank you, Kirsten.
Yeah, I hesitated on this question because the most pressing issue, that's a tough question. I can think of a few things. I'm not sure that there's any, that it's hard for me to choose like where to start, but I'll mention a few things that kind of come to mind. And there's probably other ideas that Leslie, you have, or that others might have. One idea that comes to mind is there's a percentage of folks here, more so in Wilsonville than in Westland, but a percentage, maybe about 10 to 13%, for whom English is not their first language. You know, and in a lot of cases that's Spanish. One thing that I think we're doing well in that regard is we've got this dual language program where, you know, I know a kid who is in this, a kid that's in my Boy Scout troop, and he, you know, none of his parents speak Spanish, but he's in the program, and after a few years, he's coming out of it with really, really good Spanish language skills. And then there's these other kids in the program for whom English is not their first language, and they're coming out with the English language skills that they need. I think that's a pretty good example. We ought to preserve that, build on it. So that's one example. Another example that I'll throw out for you, and this is maybe just me, but and maybe Lewis touched on this a little bit. Diversity is more than just having a bunch of different looking faces around. It's also making sure that they're really included. So one thing that's kind of an issue for me is especially after this year where we've all been away for COVID and such, they're starting the first day of school on Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish high holiday. One of my little issues, I'd like to see us not have an important school event or business meeting or what have you on a day like Rosh Hashanah or Easter or Eid al-Adha, which is the equivalent day for the Muslims, or what have you. And it's a false argument to say that this has something to do with the Establishment Clause of the Constitution. It's not. For me, it's just a matter of respect. And if you want people to show up, well, don't have an important event on a day when you know they're not going to be there. This is part of more than just talking about diversity and equity and inclusion. That is inclusion. I'll tell you one issue that I think is probably maybe people try to package as a diversity issue, and it's not. Doesn't have to be, in my view, is this view of the school resource officers. I don't believe that a one-size-fits-all approach to school resource officers is useful to any school district. I think there probably are school districts in Denter, Multnomah County or Madison, Wisconsin, where maybe there are inappropriate interactions between a school resource officer and a kid of a diverse background. I don't think that's necessarily the case here in Wilsonville. From what I gather from talking to folks, a lot of folks don't know we have school resource officers, or if they do, they've got a pretty positive view of the individuals who serve in those roles. So I don't think we should, fix something that's not broken. What I would say on that, though, is that you can't throw police at every problem. We've also got to plus up our resources for counseling and other support for kids that are at risk. I've been in a lot of countries and I've never seen throwing police at every issue solve it. So anyway, a few thoughts on diversity issues. I'd love to hear from y'all on what you guys would suggest too.
Thank you, Seji. Katie, did you?
Yeah, we have a question in chat and then we'll go to the next raised hand. The question in chat is from John McCabe. There was an agreement in 1993 signed by all three cities surrounding the Stafford area and the Westland-Wilsonville School District. It was concerning the development of the Stafford Triangle. Do you feel the agreement should be honored or ignored? Seiji.
John, please tell me more about it. I think any agreement ought to be honored. Now, tell me if there's some reason why folks think it shouldn't be. Could you expand on the question, John?
John, are you there?
Okay, the question is the Hamlet is a hard place to develop to begin with, and so the agreement was made that everything should be pushed off to the side because of how hard it's developed. And yet the administration of the school is saying at one of the meetings they had when they were doing Dollar Street that, oh yeah, Stafford is going to start building in 5 years. So if that's the case, then the agreement is ignored.
Thank you for expanding on that. And I think this may be one where, when I'm on the school board, John, I'd like you to help me learn more about this one. And as I mentioned in my introductory remarks, that went on too long, this development of the Dollar Street School and the plussing up of the old Athey Creek site, we've got to listen to you and sharp folks like yourself that are watching these issues. If I were to recommend a book, I would recommend Robin Greene's Servant Leadership. And this was something that I learned from Lieutenant General Brad Heithold, who was my boss at Air Force Special Operations Command. And the idea is that you're not there to just come in without humility and say, I know everything, this thing should be this way. Leadership is empowering people and listening to people. So John, I'm looking forward to hearing more from you on how we should move forward on something like that.
David?
I also, with the Stafford Triangle, we have seen in the last several years, several rulings and statements from our city, from adjoining cities, that imply that there are conversations that we are not we don't have access to. And so frequently it's kind of confusing. And it's one of those things that I want to learn more, because again, we're receiving statements of what West Lynn's position has been and the Stafford, and it does kind of seem like they're kind of quietly trying to just push development in with ever publicly addressing it. And that really doesn't support nor foster transparency nor accountability. And so I also feel like trying to answer that question outside of, yes, agreement should be honored. And if there is not, or if there is an addendum or amendment, it needs to be very clearly and publicly discussed so that all voices, otherwise you're going to foster further mistrust, further feelings of disconnect, and it won't make people happy.
Any other answers to the question? Okay, so we'll
Yeah.
move on to
Oh.
Michelle. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to be in agreement that with the agreement, we need to honor that. But there should also, with David, I'm in agreement with that, is that we just have to have healthy conversations and transparency, because that just increases further, distrust and just this underlying turmoil. So being a member, or actually living in the Stafford Hamlet, I would like to be informed of this talking of what's going on, because Stafford Hamlet offers very unique characteristics of having this natural resources, very close to urbanization. And I know development around Walker's Corners is always being brought up and talked about. But then over where we live, there's, wineries, and there's, little fresh cut flowers, and there's little farms, with equestrian riding lessons and things like that. So I think there can be a mutual livability and workability with that, but we need to honor an agreement and continue having just healthy conversations.
Okay. Any other comments before we move on? Kirsten?
I'll just point out that the reason that agreement was so powerful was because it was a coalition of multiple governmental entities working together. And in this, in the case of a school district and the cities, and then, I think even just the formation and development and the formalization of what you all do in the Hamlet is a great example of how, when we think about highly complex topics like this, we need people who can work together and work across governmental jurisdictions to form those same powerful alliances that really give weight. When we join together as a group, when we have all of our communities saying one thing, it's a lot harder for for a regional agency to push something that is against the wishes of the people who live here. And so again, I think that concept of building relationships, building coalitions, working across agencies, and strengthening those relationships is where a school board member and the school board itself comes into this discussion. I think obviously first and foremost, the work that you're doing as an organized Hamlet is the very first important step. And then being able to work with people from the surrounding jurisdictions is also incredibly important.
Thank you. If there aren't any other comments, we'll move on to Michelle. Michelle, did you have a question?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, my name's Michelle Bombette Minge, and I've been in the school district with children in the school district for, I guess, 15 years or so. We have, just speaking to the inclusiveness and equity issue that has been touched on this evening already. This has been an ongoing issue for my children in the district, from, everything from the Nazi salute to my kids in the school hallways to horrific Holocaust jokes. to important events scheduled on the holiest days of the school year. I'd like to know what our candidates will do to address these sort of conflicts. Obviously the racism, anti-Semitism, all of that is extremely important to be addressed. But what can we do to also expand the knowledge of our children of what the diversity and what other students in the building are celebrating and what their lives are like, what their cultures are like. And so how will the school board, how will these candidates address that? And how will you address issues such as scheduling picture day on the holiest day of the year, whether it be for the Jews or the Muslims? This has happened time and time again, and we keep being told it's not going to happen. As you might have seen in the news, the district learned within 24 hours or so of the new calendar being released this last, in the last month or so, that the first day of school, a big day for kids returning this year, was on one of the holiest days of the calendar for the Jewish calendar. We were told, you should have told us this earlier. It is on every calendar printed out there, and the Jewish Federation of Greater Portland puts this information out there for all the districts to see. We send a letter out. So that being said, because now I'm kind of soapboxing, and that's not really the point here, I'd really like to hear from our candidates. What are you guys going to do to really walk the walk and talk the talk? Because I know you're all, all the board members read the books and do all of this, and say they're doing the work. But I want to, what can you tell me you're going to do differently?
I'll just start with that. Obviously, I am not Jewish, and I am not aware of most of the Jewish holidays, other than the fact that I have a lot of Jewish clients. So I have learned about the Jewish calendar through my client base in my profession. But what I would say is that when you have a board, and I have an echo going on, so I apologize for that. But when you have a board that doesn't have diversity, there's a lot of things that get missed. And I think that it can be chalked up at some point as ignorant, but innocent ignorance, right? So when you don't, or you're not mindful of others that don't look like you, sometimes things get overlooked. So as a board member, I can promise the community that our calendars will all be merged. And so if a decision goes forward for a calendar or setting up an event or starting school on a particular day, every single holiday that has to do with everyone's ethnicity to show up on the board calendar. And on that, you can unpack and say, hey, we can't put it on that date because of X group. We can't put it on that date because we need to be mindful of this group. I think at this point, excuses are no longer acceptable. We live in a very, very highly educated community, and to continue to say that we didn't know is not acceptable anymore. We know. And so at this point, it's time to start being accountable for that. And I think with having some diversity on the board, we can be more mindful of that, right? But I also think that the board hasn't set out intentionally to piss off Jewish people or to piss off people who are Muslim or to piss off Black or piss off anybody, right? And so it's just more of, there's a lot on a lot of people's plates, but we need to stop. And something as simple, and sometimes the simplest things get overlooked, right? Oh, I thought that so-and-so would have caught that. Oh, I thought that, the superintendent would have caught that, right? But as a board, we can collectively get together and take a look at joint calendars and be mindful of how we be respectful of other people's cultures. So I can promise you that being a future board member, because I'm unopposed and I'm humbled and I'm grateful for that opportunity, that this will no longer at least be a problem that was not addressed in our meeting. And if it is put on a date that offends someone, then we will be purposely offending that group.
David?
So especially in addressing the putting it on Rosh Hashanah, and by the way, first off, happy Ramadan to a lot of my friends. It is unconscionable, it is inexcusable, and any excuses come across like, we didn't know it was Christmas. You don't get to play that card. It is, as everyone has said, and I'm sure everyone will agree, you look at a frickin' calendar, you can import all religious holidays onto your Apple or your Android. This should have not happened. This is inexcusable. This isn't kosher. Huh. It does start with top-down management, but school boards, we are governing and we are acting in governance, not administration. And our single employee is the brilliant Dr. Kathy Ludwig, but this is something that would be within our corral. One of the ways going forward to address this is what I'm actually going to be cuddling up with later this evening, because I wasn't able to get to it yet, Senate Bill 334, which specifically says that the state boards of education must go through training of ethics, of discrimination, of the rules of confidentiality, of what their ethic rules are and how they, you can't have school board members meet independently without the rest of the group. So I'm very much looking forward to it. It does begin top down, and the first step is being accountable when you make a mistake, admitting you make a mistake, and immediately fixing it. You don't leave it the same. And I'm sure that no one's going to disagree with the majority of those comments, and all the ideas that have been proposed are appropriate and correct. And thank you.
Any other candidates like to speak on this question?
I'll just say a couple words on it. Michelle, thank you so much for bringing it up, and thank you for being a leader on this issue. And that's your leadership helped Elisa and I join and signing on to this letter with 67 other members of our community to ask the school board to change this. And I'm also real pleased with the other letter that was supported by local Muslim friends, the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, and the ecumenical Christian community, asking for the same consideration. Yeah, our young son, it's going to be his first day, 9th grade, Wilsonville High School. He's going to miss it for Rosh Hashanah. So we're with you, Michelle. And I'll just mention that, and thanks David and Lewis too for recognizing this. I'll just mention that the school board did have a chance to address this in one of its recent meetings, and they chose not to. So we're gonna pick it up again when I'm on the board.
Can I just, if I can just comment, I think I'm unmuted. I just would like to thank you guys, you all, for the responses and appreciate the thoughtfulness.
Can I, because I think I even commented on one of those Facebooks about trying to change the calendar to even just a week before to avoid that. I think as a board member, it's just important to make sure that when we are making these decisions, we're making the decisions where we are taking all students in consideration and making sure that they're all feeling valued. And again, that was just one of my suggestions of, looking and starting school the week before, so it would not interfere with that. But I think we just need to make our decisions intentionally, and as other people said, other candidates is, look at the calendar, but just make sure that all students are feeling valued.
Thank you.
Any other comments before we move on to the next question?
So Katie.
Yes.
And Katie and Katie. Yeah, I kind of feel like, we've got a lot of not only ground to cover as a board, but we've got one more community meeting piece that we need to work our way through. Is there a chance that folks could send questions in to the, either on the website or to Stafford Hamlet Gmail account, whichever you folks think would be the best, and we distribute them out to them, and then put the answers on the website so that they don't feel like they didn't have a shot at. I mean, I feel like we had a really good discussion. I feel like there's a lot of work yet to do, but I also feel like we're kind of working our way, through both the CPO meeting and the board meeting time as we keep going. So
Sure, Bill. Let's encourage folks to, if you have questions that you haven't been able to ask tonight, that you email them into the Hamlet. The website has the Hamlet email on it, and then we can go from there and get that information posted and back to the candidates, and then post it on the Hamlet website. Does that work for everyone? Okay.
And we want to thank all 5 candidates once again for joining us this evening and sharing your evening with us. I'm really enthusiastic as a parent with children in the school district as well about the leadership that will be at the helm. So thank you again. Really appreciate your time and your thoughts.
Could I ask a question of the panelists or the candidates, if they could list what position they're seeking, please?
Lewis Taylor, position number 1.
Sage Shiratori, position number 5.
Kelly
David,
Sloop. Oh. Kelly Sloop, position number 5.
and just to finish that trifecta, David D. Jones, position number 5.
And I'm Kirsten Wyatt, position number 3.
Thanks a lot, folks. Thanks for coming, and thanks for the good questions. And the equity, diversity, inclusivity issue is what we're going to transition the remainder of the community meeting to. So nice segue. And good luck to all of you in the election.
Thank you.
You're Katie Kreider. You're up yet again.
So this evening, we are presenting the Stafford Hamlet's kind of final draft of our equity and inclusion statement, diversity, equity, and inclusion statement, excuse me. And we're going to vote on it as a board for adoption. And I assume that, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, that will be adopted into our bylaws. Oh.
Bill, you're on mute.
There we go. I thought that the board had embraced what we had discussed, but if we need to vote on that, to make that more formal, that's fine. What I was looking for was the participants, that is the folks that are in the audience, and certainly the people that yes. that live in the Hamlet. Both Kelly and Lewis can vote as well to get I guess put it in front of the public and get their vote. So it's a two-part process. But yeah,
okay.
However you want to make that happen, Katie, that's we're fine.
Okay. Well, as you recall, at our last board meeting, we did have a few modifications as a board. So I did finalize the statement, and I'm going to share my screen and read that out loud. And everyone will have an opportunity to read along with that with us. So the Stafford Hamlet Board of Directors is an elected group of citizens and an advisory body to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners. We represent the community known as the Stafford Hamlet within unincorporated Clackamas County, Oregon. As a group of advisors representing our community, we would like to present our core values regarding equity, diversity, and inclusion. As a metaphor for our community, rooted in our agricultural past and promoting the future of agriculture in our area, we know that biodiversity boosts ecosystems' productivity, where each component has a valuable role to play. The Stafford Hamlet community celebrates and embraces our diversity. We do not discriminate against any person because of race, skin color, sex, age, national origin, religion, financial circumstance, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, veteran status, or disability. These are the values that guide us in our actions and decisions as a board of directors representing the Stafford Hamlet.
So is there discussion? Because this is essentially, I think Katie made the changes or the few changes that we had from our last meeting. Do we have a need for discussion? And if not, do we have a motion to put this to a vote?
I move that we put this towards the vote for the approval of the board.
Okay.
Great, thanks, Rich. Thanks, Len. Okay, so we're voting on our EDI statement that Katie Kreider just read. All those in favor, I guess, raise your hand. All those opposed? Looks pretty unanimous. I think there's 9 board members here today, and that pretty well covered it. Okay, so now I think the second step would be for you to put this out to the folks that are here, and I think the only way, I mean, Lewis and Kelly have the ability to raise their hand because of how they were brought into the meeting, but everybody else is gonna, I think, have to
They
do
can
this.
raise their hand too, Bill.
Well, yeah, but I meant the physical raise their hand.
Oh.
It's like we the rudimentary board here just did. So yeah, if you can just count, that would be great. So
sure.
We're putting this out then to the participants. All those in favor?
So we, do we have any other voters? Okay, so we have 3 people voting in favor.
You got Kelly Kelly's here and she's got her physical hand up.
Okay, so we have 4 positive votes. Do we have anyone voting against the statement? We have nobody voting against the statement.
Okay, so you got board approval, you got the audience that's here tonight approval. I think the next step is we'll take this to the county. Thanks a lot, Katie Kreider.
Beautiful.
Okay, I think the only other thing that was on the list is to note, as far as we know, Clackamas County Sheriff Angela Brandenburg will be our speaker at next month's meeting. And if you want to hear what the new sheriff has to say and how she sees the future, that would be a great half hour, 45 minutes to spend listening. I think this closes our community meeting portion. We're going to move on to the CPO meeting. And that board, which John McCabe, Randy Yamato, Len Schauber, and Mitch Jones are all board members. You folks, Randy, unmute yourself, bud. You're on.
Okay, we had a meeting on the 9th, and we sort of assembled the board, and Bill brought a agenda to the meeting, and we went over the agenda, and basically we were trying to figure out how we were going to function. And so we established responsibilities and came up with board positions. So as far as the responsibilities go, we're all going to receive email from the county, and the email from others who contact the CPO. And I contacted Jonna about how we could route the emails so that we all receive them. And Jan is out of town for now, so I haven't heard back from her. And the postal situation remains to be resolved. And I believe that Mitch is going to attend the PGA, not the golf thing, but the, I think Bill can explain that a little bit. And then the tasks that people are going to perform would be, we're all going to do the CPO Gmail account. And for posting the projects on the Hamlet website, I'll talk to Tate about that separately. We can email back and forth and figure out how to do that. And then as far as using, sending out newsletters through email to the community, I can get Carol to set up that system for me, so I can do that. And then I have Jana checking on how to obtain the email addresses for the CPO residents. And I think we have some of those, but I'm pretty sure that we don't have all of them. And I'd like Mitch to explain a little bit about what has happened on the South Lake Park, the soccer park. And so if he could go ahead and do that now, I'd appreciate it.
Hey, thanks. I had to find my unmute button, but thanks, Randy. This is Mitch Jones here. So I think most of you know that the WFC is trying to put in a huge soccer facility, multi-sport complex in the CPO organization right next to South Lake Church. In quick summary, it's 5,000 people per week, 5,000 people on soccer weekends. Quite an intense thing that they're trying to put into RRFF5, which is Rural Residential Farm Forest, 5 acres. So right now we're, somehow the county over a couple of generations of product since 2017 is agreeing this is an okay thing to do for similar use. And at this point in time, we're really at the appeal of LUBA, Land Use Board of Appeals, the state, and 2 different levels. One for similar use because they made a similar use interpretation saying this is okay, and the second they have a conditional use permit approval. And so we're appealing that to LUBA. And at this point in time, we put the similar use determination request on hold while we settle the CUP. That's at the advice of our attorney, and to see really is this really a similar use, because if you talk about I think if you talk about whether this really is similar to anything else in RFF5, I don't think you could talk to 100 people and have one that say this is actually similar to things that are in the actual agricultural area we live in. I mean, we have a horse. Myself, we have a horse property. Next door is Julie Mass, and they have Christmas tree farms. This is nothing similar. So but that's it's not a lot changed since the last time we talked, except for maybe we put the similar use interpretation on hold. And I think in the next probably 5 to 6 weeks, we'll have a LUBA decision, and hopefully 3 independent LUBA judges will not agree that this is really a similar use for what's zoned for our FF5, despite the fact the county keeps saying that it is. Anyway, so we're really waiting for scheduling for the CUP decision from LUBA at this point, Randy and team. So, and I'll stop at that point unless you have questions.
I've got one thing that I'd like to add what Mitch just said, to the fact that when the ruling came down, the hearings officer basically said that similar use did not depend upon zoning. Just because similar use, like could be a park in Tigard or within the city limits of some city, that had nothing to do with not being able to be used in RFF5, which I completely disagree with. And so I can't really fathom how they could make such a decision, but anyhow, that's part of it.
It's a good point, Len, and I agree with you. It makes no sense to me, really, except for the fact that, well, yeah, it makes no sense to me either. Yeah, thanks. That's all for me. Thanks, guys.
I had a couple other items, and I think we ought to, at this point, I think we ought to check on the progress of some of the other things that have come up in the last couple months. And one was Sally Vischer. What's happening with her neighbor's house or neighbor's accessory building or whatever that is? I'm not real familiar with it, but I kind of want to revisit that and see what kind of progress they've made on the construction and also the conformance. And there are some other couple of other things. Maybe it was the Stafford School. I'm not familiar with that. They're adding a building or something. They need to change the parking a little bit. And then, and I'm wondering if they're, well, I think that the county is going to issue other upcoming CPO requests and proposals, and we'll get those. But at this point, I don't know of any others that are coming up. And then as far as the positions for the CPO, Lynn chose to do the secretary position, Mitch, the treasurer, John, the vice chair. And so I guess that leaves me with the chair. So that's about it. Oh, and one other thing. I got some information on plants from the Shoals Valley Native Nursery for Andy Munson, and they have some hundreds of oak trees, and if you buy them all, they'll probably be in the neighborhood of $1 a piece. So I don't know what kind of price that Andy was talking about. Maybe he could explain that price, but maybe what I think is that maybe I need to send this information over to Andy first. He can take a look at it, and then maybe at the next meeting he could give us a rundown on it. I have an email from the owner that says he's interested in providing the plants and also his plant schedule, and he can provide other plants that are oak savanna type plants or wetland plants, whatever. So that's about it. I think also in the Hamlet, there was some comment that the Hamlet should have, I mean, that the CPO, got that mixed up, the CPO should also have a separate inclusion statement. Now, I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but I think we can email back and forth and figure that out and show up with it at the next meeting. So that's about it for what I know. So Len knows, has more of a history on this thing. So I think if you have anything to add, Len, jump in. And so I'm done.
Okay, as far as an update on the Sally Vischer system or the question, the application for building the structure has been approved by the county as far as an agricultural building. And the code enforcement people in the county cannot get involved in actual use of the building until after it's constructed and started to be used. So that's what we're kind of waiting on. It's not been finished yet. So they haven't started to use. As soon as they start using it for whatever they are using it for, if it's not the agricultural use, then the code enforcement can step in and put the kibosh on it at that time. But right now it's just kind of on hold for this until it gets completed.
Thanks.
Man.
Go ahead.
One thing I noticed I was taking a look at her description of of what actually was going on out there, and from her description, they weren't building what they had submitted. They have to submit at least an overall plan layout, even if it's an agricultural building. And from her description, and I haven't seen it, but from her description, it sounded like they weren't building what they submitted for. And so those guys at some point have to come out and take a look at it and review it while it's in the construction process. And so I'm thinking that if they come out and if they come out and take a look at it and it doesn't conform to the original layout by a long shot, I mean, a little bit's not going to matter, but if it's way out of conformance, then will we get that information, or will nothing be said?
Randy, this is Rich. I believe nothing is going to be said.
Wow.
Also, I'm not familiar with this, so I hesitate to use this much time up on it, but yeah. Is it an agricultural building?
Yeah.
Okay, did they have to get an electrical permit for it?
They have to have an electrical permit and a plumbing permit. If they have then they have a bathroom there, from what I can gather.
Okay, so under a standard agricultural building, if you put up a pole barn and you didn't tell the county you were planning on electrifying it, the county doesn't show up for that building. So the only people that are going to show up are going to be the electrical and plumbing inspectors. They do not have to have a general review of the building as an ag building.
In this county?
In this county. I can put up pole barns all day of every day. And as long as they're a true agricultural use, and I don't have to have any other inspectors, The building does not need to be inspected. As long as it's not for public use. And if it is for public use, then they actually have to build it under an engineer's approval, and it has to be done as a commercial building. I happen to know about both these things. So I'm off.
Okay. Okay. Sounds like we wait then. Okay.
Well, yeah, I think, you know, I mean, Len made some inquiries, you know, the model, the model is an absolute train wreck. I mean, you wait till the building's up, you wait till somebody's using it, then you show up and you say, well, you know what, you're not using it the way you were supposed to, so then what? I mean, yeah, it's you know, the game's being played here. So, however, if, you know, if it's Randy, if it's Len, whomever, whichever one of you folks wants to make some inquiries, it'd be great to get an update. And to that end, don't forget about utilizing the CPO Summit as a resource to, I'm sure other folks have run into this in the past. So, I mean, there may be no answer, but maybe there is too. So that, again, Randy, John, Len, Mitch, thanks so much for taking this on, and welcome aboard. And we'll expect fantastic things out of the Four Musketeers. Yeah. So unless you have something else, Randy, I'm going to move this into the to the board meeting. Are we good? Okay. I'm going to call them the Hamlet board meeting to order. We have an agenda. I'd like to have somebody, unless they want to change it somehow, approve the agenda as written. Do I have somebody that will do that?
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Thanks, Rich. We have a second.
Second.
Thanks so much, Andy. So if the agenda has been moved and seconded, all those in favor of the agenda as written, let's have a physical raise hands. Okay, looks like a whole bunch of folks, about everybody that's here. Anyone that's opposed to the agenda? Crickets, good. Moving on, Kate Roth sent out a copy of the minutes of the community meeting and the board meeting. I only found one that was basically a typo, and it's not a big deal. It was just that instead of power under the PGE folks that we had tentatively scheduled, she wrote people. I mean, as it turns out, PGE is not on our list now to have as a speaker because it became somewhat problematic. So other than that, I thought Kate did a great job. It's always good to read what we ground our way through the previous month. So anybody else have any changes they want to make to the minutes of either the community meeting or the board meeting? Okay, so that being the case, somebody want to make a motion to approve the minutes as written?
I move that we
Yes.
approve the minutes as written.
Thanks.
I
Larry.
second. I
And
second.
Patty seconds them. Thanks so much. Let's have some hands for moving on through the minutes. Thanks. And anybody opposed to the minutes as written? All right. Now, some interesting stuff. Not history, but I guess recent history. Communications committee had a meeting on, I guess, 2 days ago. Patty, you want to fill us into to what came out of that?
Yeah, I don't have, shoot, I don't have my notes right in front of me. Let's see. I think the first thing we talked about was the issue that had been brought up about identity and branding of the hamlet. And this was an issue that Andy and Tate and Caroline were going to work on. And so I think, well, Tate and Andy came up with something. Right, I think it was the deadline pressure that propelled this clear thinking. Yeah, right. Deadline like 5 minutes before the meeting. Anyway, they came up with what we thought was a pretty good. What I don't know what you would call that. Just a, do you call that a logo or anyway? It was Keep Stafford Rural. And they put it on a hat, and then they had they actually had a wheat stalk next to it. So there was some conversation about like what agricultural symbol would you want to use. But anyway, we thought that was a pretty good beginning for branding the conversation really was that a lot of people don't know what a hamlet is. So maybe in terms of doing like stickers and things, you know, to sort of get our image out there, we need to keep it really simple and just kind of focus on Stafford because that also brings in a wider community. So I think basically we sort of agreed that we were still working on that. Is that right, Andy? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of what we, you know, we're pushing for is something very simple. You know, it's much like the Keep Tahoe Blue campaign, and something where people would identify this area and go, okay, yeah, that's rural. We all agreed that we're not wheat farmers out here, but we figured that that imagery is super simple, and it's kind of like, oh, okay. You know, that's a rural area. I mean, we talked about using a sunflower or squash or something else to represent the area that we do possibly all grow in our gardens. But just using something iconic like that would help convey that so that we don't, you know, I think get lost in the weeds. We just want, you know, the general public to know, hey, yeah, Stafford's great and it needs to remain rural. So.
Thanks. I think that was a better explanation than I gave. So the point is we're still kind of working on it a little bit in terms of what the visual is. I think that we want to go with it, but we have talked about being able to use this on many different items, you know, like clothing and stickers and, you know, and to kind of whatever we settle on to just use it so that we get people thinking along those lines. Then we also talked about an event that we're planning. Well, it's not really an event per se, but we're planning to do, I think we're calling it, for one of a better name, Sunflower Power. And so we're basically encouraging everyone in the Stafford area to plant sunflowers and to plant them particularly by places where people driving by could see them. So, you know, in the fronts of their yards or by their mailboxes. So one member of our committee, and I think I'm going to just go ahead and let her talk, went ahead and bought a whole bunch of sunflowers. Kelsey, are you on? Is she here?
I'm here. Hi.
So why don't you tell us what you did with that and where we're going to go with it?
Yeah, so I got some sunflowers, and we talked about at the meeting how we were going to distribute those. We actually bought the seeds, not the sunflowers.
Yeah, right.
Sorry. And so we discussed, I think, putting those in some little envelopes and that seemed to be an easy thing to do. We're going to put a little information card in there with information on how to plant them, when, how to grow them. And we discussed getting, I think we decided a stamp to label those with, and how we're gonna, just where we're gonna put those things, put the seed packets where people can come and pick them up. I think we talked about having them at the farmer's market, if that's a possibility, having a booth there. Perhaps at Fiala's, just different locations. Certain people have like the little farm stands where they sell eggs, where we could leave them there for people to pick up. And so we discussed that. So there's some information on social media, just encouraging people, like you said, to be on the lookout for that. We're still kind of working on it, but I think, was it the middle of May? Was that when we were, or the beginning of June? When is the ideal time to plant?
I think, yeah, I think we were sort of shooting for like to start, you know, about the middle of May, but
yeah,
yeah, between the middle of the May and the end of the month, right?
Yeah, so that's pretty much where we're at right now. We're gonna have a little packing party, I think, coming up soon on the 5th. So
Right. So I really would like to recognize Kelsey for taking this and running with it, because she's already put together some information on it on social media, and just didn't take any prodding from me. She already took, and she went and bought, like, I don't know how many pounds of sunflower seeds. So. But we actually, then I also have to give credit to Rich, because this was his idea. So, and I think it's a great idea. And I'm already envisioning all these sunflowers coming up all over the hamlet, and hopefully we're not going to create a traffic jam with people driving by to see all the sunflowers, but I think it's going to be great. And Katie Kreider I think she had a really good idea too, of just taking these packets to the farmer's market and handing them out to people, and encouraging everybody, you know, to go ahead and plant sunflowers and think of the Stafford Hamlet when they see their sunflowers.
Do you mind, Patty, if I just share something really quick?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sort of stepping back 2 steps, just the idea also was as we're coming out of the pandemic, hopefully we weren't able to do the Family Fest again this year in the fall. So this is in lieu of that, as a way to kind of show solidarity to the community, and all of us kind of celebrating the Hamlet in our own way. So anyway.
Yeah, no, I think I'm excited about it, and I think it's a great idea. I'm trying to think, what else did we talk about? We talked about
okay, so you're obviously not going to say this yourself, so I will say it. You went out and rousted some folks to be neighborhood liaisons. So this is Patty's idea. Patty takes the initiative, and Patty can't remember she did it. But yeah, go.
Well, we're still working on that particular piece. But those actually, the neighborhood captains are people that we're going to contact also as people to be keepers of the sunflowers. You know, where people can go and pick up sunflowers. So
Patty,
yeah.
trash pickup. Trash pickup.
Oh, the trash pickup. Yeah, that's right. Sure. Andy, do you want to take that?
Let me unmute. There we go. I was just bringing up the calendar. It is, let's see, Earth Day on the 22nd. So we're going to encourage everybody to get out and be socially distant in the hamlet and pick up just litter and garbage and stuff on the roads around here. During the last ice storm, we saw an awful lot of garbage down off Grapevine. And I don't know if it was a storm that cleared out the leaves so you could see it, but there were like old tube TVs and barbecues and toilets. I mean, all sorts of garbage. So we're going to get down there. We're going to get it out. Yeah. So that day, Earth Day, get out, wear something bright so you don't get hit by a car, and let's clean this place up.
Yeah, and I think hopefully Tate's going to put something about this on the website. Maybe I might need to send him a little reminder, but Kelsey may have already done something with this on our social media, but we were just doing it in conjunction with Earth Day because we figured, wasn't our thinking that that's usually when Solve has a pretty big cleanup on that day? So we were just going to encourage everybody to go ahead and do individually in their own neighborhoods to do this. So so I think that will be a great idea, and also just easy to implement. You know, it's not going to be like something we have to really organize. Other than that, I know. I got to give a hand to Katie because Katie Kreider came up with a coupon to put in the welcome packets that the Oswego Hills Winery said they'd be happy to do a 2-for-1 tasting if we would come up with the coupon. So Katie designed one. And so it's just one more thing that we have to be able to put in our welcome packets. Just advertising, you know, businesses that are in the Hamlet. So we're always open to other people who want to advertise their business and give us something to put into the welcome packet. And other than that, I think that about covers it for our meeting. Sorry, I didn't have my minutes with me, so.
Well, that's okay. Taking time to talk about the efforts that you guys are making is time well spent, and it wasn't exactly like we were hitting our targets anyway, so not to worry. The other committee that did have some activity was the Ag Committee, and we had a meeting with Rowan Steele from the Headwaters Incubation Farm out in, I don't know if it's Troutdale, somewhere in East Multnomah County, which was real informative. We also had another talk with Nellie McAdam and Alice Williamson from the Oregon Agricultural Trust, a wing of the Columbia Land Trust. So that was good. And then probably the most time-consuming piece of information from Rich and myself has been, we did our initial pitch last night to Tualatin City Council about putting the community vision plan into their, as an amendment in the three-way IGA between themselves, Lake Oswego and Westland. Westland and Lake Oswego are the 19th and 20th of April. So one's in the rearview mirror, 2 more to go. They didn't cut us off. They let us finish. They were very polite and positive. However, they did not take a vote, nor did we exchange much. But then we were the last. We were last, about the last thing on the docket, and they'd been working since 5 o'clock, and this was approaching. Geez, I think it was approaching 8 or 8:15 by the time we got up. So they were somewhat spent. But it was good, and I was until until this ran the way it was. I was going to run through this PowerPoint with everybody, and we can still do it. But I just feel like you guys have spent enough time here in a couple of hours in this meeting that we can do it next meeting, or if you want to tune in, and I think it's also been recorded through Tualatin, but you can tune in Lake Oswego or Westland. Westland, I believe, is at 7 o'clock on the 19th, and Lake Oswego is about 3 o'clock. It's a work session for them.
Say, Bill, you know, we were hoping to be able to get that information about how we would tune in. And we never got that. What was it? Is it posted on the website, or do we need to go and, like, how do we get it?
Okay, so if that, I'll just take ownership of that. I probably didn't give you guys enough information. And what we can do though is we can get you the link. I mean, you can go to either Westland or Lake Oswego and look up their council meetings, and it will have a link just like our Zoom link for ours, for folks that aren't on the panel. But I can also route that up and get that to you. I mean, my guess is that Rick Cook probably right now has that, someplace as a button on his computer that he can press and the thing flies right up in front of you. But I can certainly do that. So if all you knew that it was going to happen, but you didn't know how to get into it, my apologies.
Well, I don't think I was going to do it last night anyway, but I would send it out to the board because I think there's a couple of volunteers that are interested in this, so I'd like to pass it on to them as well.
Sure. No, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Thanks.
You bet. No, thank you. And I think the only other bit of news that I've got, well, we got Andy, so that's another bit of news, but we'll hold up on Andy for just a second, is there's going to be now a quarterly 5 minutes of dialogue with the county commissioners. So before this, we were doing it about every month. Beaver Creek was taking one meeting and we were taking another. We kind of worked together, so we weren't both there at the same time. And we were just doing it as citizens, so we were getting 3 minutes. Sue Hildick, who is the director of the Public and Government Affairs, not the Golf Association. She worked it out where we're going to get 5 minutes once a quarter. And so we've picked, I want to say it's June 17th, and Beaver Creek is sometime in May. So, anyway, whether it's myself or Rich or somebody else, somebody will get up and tell them what we've done over the last 3 months and what we'd like to see happen in the future, and if there's any issues that we have. But if it isn't, it doesn't feel like the time crunch that we had when it was only 3 minutes. It feels like a little more planned and a little more embracing. So anyway, that's I don't know if Katie Wilson wants to take all the credit for making that happen, but she can certainly take some. So.
Well, thank you. Hey, Bill.
Yes.
This is also your reminder about the letter, the earmark letter.
Thank you,
that
Katie.
we talked about early. You look confused.
Did I write that?
The earmark letter for the 65th Ellickson Road and Stafford Road intersection.
Oh, that. Okay.
And we have to take a vote on this.
That's right. So, Rich, take it away, buddy. Yeah, I mean, you got your opinion, but go neutral and give us the lowdown.
So, Katie, would you please share?
Yeah. So we received this request from our government affairs team, and there is an opportunity. I will share the project. So we get federal earmarks for projects, and this project came up as an opportunity. And so the government affairs team wanted to know if the Hamlet would like to write a letter of support for this project. So it's the 65th Ellickson Road, Stafford Road intersection improvement. And this information is on the county website, by the way, if you want to look into it further. I'm not an expert on the project, but The concept is to help eliminate heavy congestion and improve safety by replacing the stop controlled intersection with a roundabout. And so if you are interested in supporting this project, what our government affairs team at the county would like to know is if you would like to submit a letter that would go to Congressman Schrader to support this project. And our staff did take a moment to provide some supportive language to help you draft the letter if you want it. You can write your own letter, of course, too. But I can show you that too if you'd like to see that. But I can scroll down so you can see there. It's projected that we're asking for $10 million in support for this. And that would support the total cost of a $12.3 million project.
So let me give you some input here. So this needs to be in, everybody, by the 15th.
Yes, I forgot to say that. Thank you.
Take a look at the date. It's close. It's a big congestion problem, as probably everybody knows. It was on the list to be done, but the vehicle registration fee wouldn't fund this immediately. It was going to be maybe 4 to 6 years before that would have an opportunity to be funded as capital improvements from the vehicle registration fee. So you have an opportunity here where we can actually have a large impact on an area not in the hamlet, but in our community. And it's something that is a dangerous intersection, and it can be done. A letter that the staff provided for us is very easily adoptable by us. It's simple, to the point. We don't have to add any language. All we have to do really is see if we, and Katie, could you share it? There you go. Thank you. So everybody takes a quick look at this, and we take a vote on whether to create a letter and support it, and then take a vote on that. And then secondarily, that we would take a vote if this is the letter that we want to do. And then we can get this thing filled out and turned in if that's the direction we want to go.
Rich, could you just, could you clarify where that intersection is? Is that the one?
When you head south on Stafford Road,
right,
and you wanted to get to Costco, Ellickson Road is the road that runs into 65th and then intersects at Stafford Road. It's that convoluted intersection.
Right, okay, I know where it is. Yeah.
So you've got down the hill coming from Tualatin on 65th, intersecting Stafford Road, and Ellickson Road's right there too. So the design that you're seeing is a roundabout, which I'm actually surprised because they didn't know if they could do it. But if they've got the clearance and concept already ready for this, then the roundabout is a good way to go at that intersection.
I know exactly where you mean. Okay, yeah, it's a mess, right?
It is. It slows everybody down, and it should help not only the safety but the congestion.
Okay.
Bill, I'd like to make a motion.
Great, do that, Len.
I move that we proceed with forwarding a letter to Congressman Schrader, supporting the roundabout improvement for this Ellickson Road Stafford 65th intersection.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
Andy Munson seconds it. All right. So do we need any more discussion, or I see a finger?
I thought we were voting.
Oh.
Finger.
That was a big finger too. It was close. No, well, we can vote, but preceding the vote, if there was going to be any more discussion, we can have that too. I guess if I were to say something on this, obviously it's needed. We just had Rich sit through, God knows how many hours of how to implement the DMV funds for road improvement and maintenance. So he's got a grip on this. It doesn't feel like a zero-sum game. It isn't like if this money doesn't go there, it goes to someplace else. They're focused on taking it there. And if that makes that place safer, then I think, that's something that we can probably all get behind. So, I mean, it isn't Johnson Road in Stafford, which, would be our turf, but, maybe they'll support us down there if we support them from up here. So I guess my opinion is, it isn't necessarily it isn't in our house, but it certainly is going to help our neighbor. Anything else? Okay, so are we ready to take a vote? All those in favor? Hands up, folks. Look at that. Fingers, hands, the works. Katie Kreider, make your still picture move back and forth if you're in favor. Hey, okay. Anybody out there opposed?
I'm not opposed, but the question I have is I just looked on the map, and this is almost in the 1st congressional district where this roundabout's going to be. So do we also want to send it to the congressperson from the 1st congressional district?
Wow.
So John, is that John speaking?
Yep.
Yeah, it was John.
Okay.
Yep.
So John, if you read the letter that Katie flashed, not the letter, but the description of the project, they're asking Congressman Schrader to do an earmark on this, since as much of the project is in Clackamas County as Washington County. I understand your thought. Do we get 2 instead of 1? I don't know if the public and governmental affairs has an opportunity to time-wise to get that to be done. Not a bad idea, don't get me wrong. I just don't know time-wise, and Katie, you can weigh in here. Is there any
I don't know, but I certainly could share with them your interest in doing so.
So if we're down to the 15th, it's going to take a while to figure that out. The letter of support that we just voted on, yes, goes to Schrader. Can we add something to our letter that also would recommend that? I can't think of who our congressman is in the 1st district, but do we add that as well? Who is it?
It's a woman. I can't remember her name.
Bonamici.
There you go. Thank you. Anyway, Katie, well, my gut is that we don't have enough time to change everything into that.
I would assume we're in a tight time frame too. And I would presume that there's a reason why we're asking to go the route that we're going. There's probably a strategy to it, but I don't know for sure. So the ask is to write the letter to Congressman Schrader, but I certainly could share the question about why we are not reaching out to Congresswoman Bonamici.
Could be that Clackamas County has the support, where I can tell you for a fact that Washington County had no interest in funding this project.
That could very well be.
Okay. All right. So
next steps are, who should I work with to get the letter finalized?
Not it.
One that you read sounds like a pretty good one to go with right the way it is, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. So
if you're comfortable with that language, I can edit it, send it back to the board for a quick okay, and get it back to the government affairs team if that works for everybody.
Well, the only thing you would edit into it would be the fact that the Stafford Hamlet address, so on and so forth, supports it. Is that correct? So does it need board approval if we trust you to that
if you trust me to that extent, it does not need board approval.
I'm comfortable with that.
If you cannot trust your liaison to the county, who can you trust? There you go.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. Sorry to take so long on that issue.
No. I apologize. I mean, it was only 2 hours ago that we talked about this, and I couldn't even retain it. Okay, Munson, do you got anything from the sheriff's department for us?
I do.
We'll talk.
We're averaging about a call a day out here in the Hamlet. I got a big report, and kind of poured through all the calls, and I started talking to a deputy about it to try to go, okay, can we make some kind of calculations on whether there's more crime or less crime out here? And, there's certainly nothing that I saw that was like, wow, we should be gravely concerned that, we're being overrun by, I don't know,
Troglodytes.
bad guys.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think it'll be one of the big things I want to ask the sheriff coming up is, how do you guys allocate resources out here, and how do we document the allocation of those resources so that we know that we're getting deputies when we're paying for them?
So Andy, this is Rich. Since they're not having to spend a bunch of deputy time on calls,
right?
Then can't they put resources here for traffic? I know we talked about it Sunday, but
yeah, and ultimately, I would think that they've got deputies trained, that are on the motorcycles that look like stormtroopers. That, that's what they do. So, if you want to invite them out here, we can.
I will make sure I don't use the stormtrooper reference.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, outside of that, I saw a litter call that was on there that piqued my interest. So I'm going to look into that a little bit. I don't know if it was an illegal dumping call, but I can't stand litter bugs, so it'd be fun to figure it out.
Well, let's have some specific questions that we can give to Sheriff Brandenburg when she shows up next month.
Yeah, and I think having that limited opportunity with the sheriff, like you had said in the email to me, Bill, it's very important that if you guys want to prepare any questions for how they're responding as law enforcement, especially in the current climate, now would be the time to ask those questions to the head, of the entire organization.
Yep, great. Okay, you know what I didn't do? I didn't share Bill Long, who felt ill, was here for a little bit before early on, and then checked out. I think the only check he wrote last month was catching up on Kate Roth and her billable hours to us, which are typically $75 each time she takes minutes for the board and the community meeting. So I want to say it was a $450 check. So I don't know, that's 6 months. Anyway, that was all I think that he wrote, and we'll try to get Randy Amata and Mitch and John and Lynn all tied in with Bill going across the river now to Gladstone to get the postal service mail, because that's where our mailbox is over there now. And so that can be kind of a group effort as opposed to just, one or two people. Anyway, unless somebody else has some more business that I'm missing, I'll try to get you guys hooked into the next Monday and Tuesday meetings at Lake Oswego or Westland and Lake Oswego. Thanks for sticking it out for this. Thanks, Katie Kreider, for your efforts here, Kelsey, and Rich, and everybody else. We'll see y'all soon.
Okay. See ya.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye now.
Ciao.
Good night.
Bye.